We've been checking our Moultrie game cameras and they're getting some awesome deer footage. Fall has become one of my favorite seasons for this, but it wasn't always that way. Before I started homesteading, before we owned any land, before we had the ability to raise our own meat for our family, my wife and I got pregnant. Having a baby boy made us a little bit more concerned about the food we were putting on the table. Up until that point, we were kind of like Taco Bell junkies, you know, eating fast food a bunch. We weren't too concerned about what we were feeding ourselves. But then, Kay got pregnant with my son and everything changed. We wanted to give him the best quality meat that we could. But at the time, we couldn't really afford organic, pastured, local meat. It's expensive. And we were in a third-story apartment. We had no place to raise our own animals for food. And that's where this came in. The bow and arrow. Now when you think of a bow and arrow, if you're not a hunter, you probably think of a different looking bow. Something that doesn't look quite so techy, isn't quite so complex. The sight doesn't look like something out of a Star Trek film. Probably you're thinking of a stick and a string that maybe a Native American would be running around with. If you're a hunter though, and you're a bow hunter, most bow hunters, probably the bulk of them out there, are using these compound bows. And in today's video, I'm gonna show you how I shoot this compound bow. I'm gonna teach you how to shoot it the right way. And with a little bit of practice, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of bit of practice, you this very deer season coming up, which is almost here, could wind up putting a couple 100 pounds of amazing quality meat in your family's freezer thanks to the help of this bow. You don't need to own any land, you don't need to raise any animals, but you can have organic, pastured, amazing meat if you learn how to shoot this right and how to hunt deer. This upcoming deer season, I'm going to be covering this topic a lot because it's something that's close to my heart. I've been feeding my family venison for the last 10 years we've been married, and I think you should be feeding your family venison too. And it all starts with learning how to shoot a bow and arrow, so let's get into that. Maybe shooting a bow and arrow sounds like something a little archaic or ancient, but these modern bows, compound bows, are designed to be very accurate, extremely efficient tools, and they're really a good choice for someone who wants to learn how to hunt. If you learn to bow hunt first, trust me, you will be a better hunter than the same person who learns to gun hunt first. Becoming a bow hunter first will make you a better gun hunter when you do start gun hunting. And to be honest, over the last 10 years that I've been hunting now, I have had more success. I have killed more deer, put more meat in the freezer with a bow than I have with a gun. Generally speaking, states allow you to bow hunt a lot longer than they do gun hunt, and they allow you to bow hunt earlier and later in the season than they allow you to gun hunt. If you're serious about putting food on the table, a bow is a great way to do it. Good quality, pastured, organic meat. It's an awesome tool. I learned how to shoot a compound bow, and believe it or not from an instructor. I learned how to shoot a compound bow from a podcast. The method I'm going to teach today was from the guys over at Bowcast. As I said in our video a week or so ago when we were shooting, before you get yourself a compound bow, go to a pro shop, get fit to a compound bow. I shoot with a release. Compound bows are very hard to shoot accurately with fingers. A release is a little trigger mechanism. It's mechanical. When I hit that button, it opens up. It allows for a more accurate shot. I have a loop on my string, which I clip my release to. My arrow is nocked and ready. We can talk about equipment in a different video. Today we're just gonna cover form. How do you shoot one of these bows? Let's start with your basic form. When you're shooting at a target, you want to stand in a slightly open position. You're not perfectly in line with your target, you're slightly open. That means your front foot is a little bit to the outside of the target, your back foot a little bit to the inside, your body twists facing that target. As far as your stance go, you don't want to overthink it too much. Whatever feels comfortable. Just put your legs out there, a little bit of bend in your knees. If it feels comfortable and you can line up nice and smooth with your target, that's a good stance. The way I draw my bow when I'm practicing is a lot different than the way I draw my bow when I'm in the tree stand. When I'm in the tree stand and I'm hunting, I try to go with as little movement as possible. I draw slowly and in a very straight line, and I come up to my anchor points. However, if you practice like that, as many shots as you will be when you begin shooting, you can wind up hurting your shoulder, wearing out those muscles. So instead, when I draw my bow, I use more of my body and a much more dramatic movement so as to not fatigue my shoulder. As the season gets closer, I will practice more like I do in the tree stand. That way I have the strength when I need it, but I don't want to fatigue my muscles too much and wind up blowing out a rotator cuff or something. I'm about to draw my bow here. I rest my bow in between my legs. I clip the loop, the release onto the loop. Now you'll notice this front arm gets fully extended as I swing my bow over, and at the same time I pull this arm back. So instead of this back arm doing all of the work like it would in the tree stand, I use the whole motion and swinging of my arm over to draw the bow. It just relieves some of the pressure on that one back shoulder, which will prevent in the long term, as much as I practice, any real damage to that shoulder. Now once you're at full draw, there's a couple of important things you need to remember before we even get into our form. You'll notice my bow has a little wrist strap around it. This is so I don't have to grip my bow with all of my fingers as if I were gripping maybe like, I don't know, a pistol. Instead, I grip my bow very loosely. There's an important reason for this. When you grip your bow like this, you're much more likely to mess up the shot downrange by making slight movements with your hand. If you grip your bow loosely, allowing the riser to only come in contact with the pad of your hand right there, you keep your fingers open, this wrist strap keeps the bow from falling out of your hand. That keeps your shots much more accurate. As I draw back, the tension of the bow against the tension of the string will keep the bow up against that pad of my hand. My fingers will be at a slight 45-degree angle, and they will all be open. Not one of my fingers will be directing that bow in any sort of direction, and that allows the bow to sit nice and straight. And when I release that string, I won't be pointing the bow in any direction when I release the string, causing the arrow to go to a different direction than what I want it to do. So make sure you have a nice loose grip and your riser is rested firmly against the pad of your hand there. That way you won't mess up your shot. We'll pull the bow back, and then we'll find our anchor points. Anchor points, you want to have at least 3 of them. Think about the tripod that my camera is resting on. 3 points make for stability. I use my knuckle resting in this pocket right underneath my ear, the string tip on the tip of my nose, and then my peep sight here, as you can see here, that small little hole, that lines up with that hole. Once everything is drawn, that creates a 3rd point in this triangle. So 1, 2, 3. Those 3 points all lined up mean I'm shooting the same spot every time. Those anchor points are very important. If you see people shooting a bow just for fun and their hands way out here and then it's over here and it's moving all over the place, they never know where they're going to wind up downrange. You need to make sure your hand is firmly in an anchor point. You can add what's called a kisser button to your string and put it in the corner of your lips. That can be used as an anchor point. You can use all sorts of different anchor points. The biggest, most important thing is that you use the same 3 anchor points at least every time you shoot to ensure that you're lining up the same way every time and sending that arrow down the same way every time. We've discussed your body stance, a loose grip, using a release, making sure your bow fits. We've talked about anchor points. Now we're going to just go through the shot process. And the shot process, I use an acronym. Again, I was taught this by the guys at Buckmasters. It's RALPH. R-A-L-P-H, Ralph. There's actually 2 L's in this acronym. That stands for raising your bow. That's pulling your bow back. R, anchor, going to your anchor points. 1, 2, 3. L, lowering your pin. It's easier to lower the pin on your sight. That right there is the pin. It's easier to lower your pin onto your target than to lift it up. So you want to draw your bow a little bit higher than it needs to be and slowly lower it into place. The second L is for level. You'll notice my sight has a small level on it. And you want to make sure that that bubble is in the center. It's level. If your bow is canted one direction or the other as you shoot, that'll change where your pin is aiming, and downrange your arrows will wind up not where you're shooting. So this is dramatic, but if you were shooting like this, it would totally change where your arrows hit as opposed to if you're aiming like this. So raise, anchor, anchor, lower, then check the level. Make sure your level is right in the center. That's your second L. Then P is find your pin. Some people like to focus on their pin when they shoot. I like to get my pin in the spot on the target, but then focus on the target. And H stands for hover. I allow my pin then to hover in place as I hold that shot and I slowly squeeze the trigger. The final piece of the puzzle is how you make your release. So this trigger release, it's easy to slam that like you might a shotgun, boom, but you don't want to do that. You don't want to flinch, you don't want to slap it. You want to put that release up into the meat of your finger and squeeze it slowly. Back here, applying back tension, having this arm go backwards a little bit and that arm go forwards, and then boom, it's a surprise as the arrow goes off. Now it's not a surprise in that you weren't trying to fire your arrow. You would never want to shoot a gun or a bow without knowing you were about to shoot it. But once you've made the decision, now it's time to shoot, you slowly squeeze until it's a surprise as it goes off. When you're going to shoot, you don't want to be trying to time your exact moment of release. You don't want to be checking that pin and checking the bullseye, checking the pin and trying to perfectly align it and then slap that trigger. That can cause what's called target panic. As you get used to doing archery more and more, you can actually develop target panic where you're like trying to make this perfect shot and then boom, your body fires, and that just messes you up and you get really, really bad at your shots. That's why you want to focus on a surprise release. Instead of trying to perfectly time it over the bullseye, allow your pin to hover. Don't focus on the pin, focus on your target. And allow that pin to move. Some really professionals will do small figure eights or little circles. Those of us who are not professional archers would just let our pin kind of hover in place. We're not worried if it goes a little to the left or right, as long as it's hovering in the basic area you want it to and you're squeezing off the shot. If you have really good form, that arrow will wind up where you want it to. Let's go through the whole process. We're going to go start with R, raise, all the way to H, hovering and holding. So we're going to raise, anchor point, the knuckle behind my ear, the tip of my nose, and lining up my peep sight. Then I'm lowering the pin to my target. Now I'm checking the level to make sure I'm not canting the bow. And now I'm letting my pin kind of disappear over the target. I'm getting my finger ready to squeeze off this shot, and I'm hovering and holding as I squeeze off this surprise shot. That's the whole process, but I still need to talk about the very last moments of your shot, which is your follow through. What do you do as that arrow is flying down range? So I'm going to hang my bow up here, grab my arrows, and we're going to talk about follow through in the next round here. There are different schools of thought when it comes to archery follow-through, but for a beginner shooter, if you're watching this video and taking my advice, you're a beginner, you're not an expert. Photobombed. This basic technique for follow-through can't do you any wrong. And that's basically your follow-through is try to be as still as possible after the shot, or if you want to get a little bit more advanced, still as possible, having your back arm come backwards, your front go slightly forward, and letting your bow roll forward with that front arm's movement. So the most basic follow-through you can go with as you're starting to shoot is don't move anything after the shot. Let's show you an example of that. So the key here is you just want to be very still with your shot. You can't do worse than that, just not moving. This arm comes back a little, that jumps forward a little bit. The key is you don't want to shoot your bow and after it dropped to see, did I make the shot? You don't want to go, because you'll start to whip your arrow. You'll literally move as the arrow is being flung out of your bow and it'll just mess the shot up completely. Instead of that, don't move at all. This is an example of what not to do. You can see that shot is much worse because as I was shooting, I was trying to see, whoa, where did I hit? What did I get? Make sure I didn't like throw the string on that one. Scary stuff. Don't do that. Make sure you're nice and steady. Now let's up the ante a little bit. If you want to get really good with your follow through, and again, this is not exactly what a professional would do, but for an intermediate shooter, this is what you'll see a lot of the hunters do. It's a nice controlled follow through. It's essentially allowing the bow as it releases to do what it would do naturally. If you hold the bow and you let it just naturally kind of fall forward, that's what you're doing. You're letting your bow shoot and you're adding no movement or control to it. You're just letting it roll forward after the shot. So let's do one of those. This is like your intermediate. You don't have to do this when you're beginning archery, but as you get better, allowing your bow a little bit of a roll forward is just a nice way to allow your bow to do its own follow through. I just hit my other arrow. I hope I didn't break it. But at least if I got a Robin Hood, it was on camera, right? That's your basic archery. That's basically how you shoot a bow, a compound bow. Different than a recurve bow. If you're shooting a recurve, don't shoot that way because that's not how you're supposed to shoot a recurve. But if you're shooting a compound bow, a hunting setup, that's a great way to go about it. Now I've moved back here quite a bit further. What you're going to see over the next few videos covering shooting, which won't be tomorrow, but as we do more shooting videos, you'll see I shoot from further and further away. I like to practice all the way out to 60 or 70 yards if I can get things lined up and shooting well that far away. Not that I'm going to hunt at 70 yards, but if I can practice at 70, then when I'm in the field and I have a 28-yard shot, it feels easy. And a lot of hunting is confidence. Let's take a couple longer shots. If you want to know anything else about hunting, bow hunting, shooting, whatever it is, leave it in the comments below because I'd like to know what to make videos about. If most of the audience is kind of bored with bow hunting and they don't want to hear much about it, I won't make more videos about it. But if there's a lot of you out there, and I think there is based off the last video's comments, who would like to get into this, I'll make the videos you want to see. And if you're really serious about learning to hunt and you'd really like to try it, I have a course. It's all about how to hunt. It covers everything from bow hunting, gun hunting, all the equipment that you need, what you don't, what you could save money on, you don't really need to buy. It talks about scouting, finding deer, all the way through to the shot, blood trailing a deer you've shot, and then butchering. We actually show you step by step how to butcher the deer and even give lessons on how to cook it. It's all video. That entire video course is available if you click there. And well, I'll put it on sale right now. I'll reduce the price from what it usually is. We'll cut it in half. So that way, if you're interested in putting this good meat on the table, we'll slash the price in half for the next month, and you guys can get a discount to that course. So check out the Wild Harvest course, it's called. And let me know in the comments below what else you want to learn here on the channel, and I'll make upcoming videos about it. We've taken a lot of pregnancy tests in our life, but never one like this.
And you little, she's not allowed on those ones. All right, so there it is. Pregnancy test sample. Could you tend it back up, please?
In tomorrow's episode of Home Study, we pregnancy test our cow. See how to pregnancy test a cow. And when will we get the results?
All right, so we'll get that sent out today. We'll have the results in them.
Watch tomorrow's video at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Do you want to learn how to hunt? The foraging beard, Jared, wanted to learn. He took the Wild Harvest course and wound up getting his first deer. Get your first deer this year. Let us help. Click here to learn more. It's on sale half price.